panel discussion here on large-scale multimedia design, interactive technology, entertainment, and what's next in visionary storytelling on a large scale for mass audiences and live event audiences. I have a great, Swami and I have put together a great panel of experts in this field. First we have Sakchin Bessette from Moment Factory. He's done over 350 audiovisual installations around the world. Madonna tour, 9 Inch Nails tour. He's done the Super Bowl, all kinds of huge events like that. We have Ryan Pulliam, who's an expert in virtual reality. She's has a couple projects in Sundance and Tribeca Film Festival. We have Shamlin, who worked on the film Apocalypto and Spiderman 2, and also Sin City. He's a visual effects expert from the film industry. And we have Jarret Smith, who's one of the creative heads behind a program called Touch Designer, which was done by his company Derivative, which is like the brain for all the installations that we're talking about today. And it's kind of the go-to platform for linking sensory devices with output devices and creating large-scale experiences. It's kind of the back end, and he's been in it for a long time, and we're happy to have him here. And we have Keisuke Shingu, who's my partner here with Robot Heart and Further Future, doing all the visuals on the screens. Thanks for coming. So, we wanted to kind of give filmmakers and multimedia designers a voice here. Having all these amazing tools out here in the desert, or out in the context of an event like this is quite a cool opportunity. We're starting to build more multimedia and more kind of large-scale audiovisual stuff into this festival, and I want to start the conversation. This is year 2. Just so we can know what's possible going forward and how we can kind of make better experiences for the audience with these new tools that are available. Just right here at an event like this. We've talked a lot about technology here this week, but ours is more focusing on entertainment and stuff that we can directly bring to you guys in years coming. So I'm going to open it up for Sakchin here, who's been in the game a really long time with this live entertainment stuff, and want to ask you about some of your bigger shows and some of your experiences where you've created a live installation or a live experience for the audience where it was like beyond a film and beyond a concert and something that was truly next level and gave you that feeling of like, wow, this is the future of entertainment, and here we are right in it. And you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Hi everyone, nice to be here. Thanks for taking the time to listen to us. Yeah, we design a big variety of types of installations and multimedia contexts, from airports to rock shows to theme parks, public spaces and stuff. But 2 years ago, a client of ours, they have this kind of like park where there's a canyon and a super long hanging bridge. It's kind of like a little camping destination, maybe 2 hours away from Montreal. And they wanted to do something at night, so they called us up to do some mapping on the bridge, or they wanted to find something that can attract people at night. And as we were exploring the site, we saw that what could be interesting is to do a trail with multiple installations. So we started looking at stories that we can tell that are inspired by like local Aboriginals and religious kind of like Christian, because it was very Christian in that area. So we basically got really inspired with these different bases of storylines, and we started creating these different installations. And this small town, and basically it's like maybe an hour walk through the forest, and you discover all these different, light installations or video projection on trees, like mapping trees and stuff. And it became super successful. So in the last year, there was about 150,000 people that went there, and that's like 2 hours from Montreal. People would wait in line for an hour, and they would come out really like, wow, happy. And it's really interesting to use the forests as a canvas and to kind of like enhance the natural space with a new way of seeing it, and using light and projection and all kinds of different technologies that are really well hidden really creates this magical story in this space. And I find it's a really interesting new medium that we've developed a few years ago.
It's amazing to have the ability to project video into a natural environment and really bring that sort of magical twinkle to the environment that we know and love, and at night too, because we, when you have that darkness, obviously you're losing a lot of that texture you're seeing during the day, but you could actually enhance it and bring it back into like a more interesting visual, and that's probably something we could do in the desert too.
Yeah, for sure. And in the forest at night, there's already this sense of mystery and kind of like drama, so it's really interesting to kind of enhance it and play with it. In this small town, there's about 2,000 people that live there, and there was 2,000 people a night that would come there. So it really changed the economy also of this place, which is also an interesting impact for these installations.
Do you see a way that you could have an installation like that going in the context of something with where there's live entertainment, or maybe an artist presenting on a stage, and have like that kind of projection going on, like bleeding off the stage onto the environment around them?
Yeah, I think this specific installation is like there is no stage, so you really have to go and discover, and that makes it even more interesting. But we use also for different similar installations where we have performers and artists that are kind of like enhancing the storytelling and the experience. So the stage is kind of like a very different context. When we work with rock shows and stuff, people come with a different intention, and there's always this kind of like link with the band and link with the persona that you want to kind of enhance in the experience, that you want people to connect more with the music. So, in an arena, in a festival environment, the tools are different and the experiences are different for sure.
Yeah, that makes me think of Jarret, your experience working on Plastic Man. We were talking about how you created this real-time system for Richie Hawtin to kind of plug into, just as a singular artist vision, controlling this very complex audiovisual system just kind of directly and in real time.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about today is immersive experiences. So experiences that this is where we are right now. This is probably why we're talking about it. Derivative, my company made Touch Designer. We split off from the film effects industry. We were making visual effects software for making films. The process was kind of tired, and it was tough. You have to, click render, wait a couple hours for the output, and check it. You check it out. It's wrong. Okay, fine. My CEO Craig Kamanovic was the inventor of that. But in 2000, he told me. I remember carrying a big screen, and he was like, "One day that'll be on your watch. Like the computer will be on your watch." He was wrong. It's in your pocket. But I mean, ostensibly it's true. And so what we wanted to do was to take that technology and enable people to create things in real time, and we wanted it to be connected to music. We were big fans of Norm McLaren, like all these real-time film painted film music, connected film pieces. And so we started the company to do visuals for shows, and that over time we realized that wasn't going to pay the bills. We got into theme park attractions and then into more like architectural installations. And we supported ourselves for many years doing that. I think now we're coming back around where the technology's kind of there to enable it. And so with Richie Hawtin, for example, Richie wants to be in control of everything, and so we provided him a tool set essentially through Ableton Live, through Max for Live, we connected the Ableton Live set to our visual system, and he performs it. A lot of people don't understand this, that it seemed like a tight show, but it's not locked video, and I think most shows are often locked video. Instead, he performs everything. So when he clicks a note on the, and you might see that behind us here, when he clicks the note in Ableton, you'll have an effect. And so that's what we're really about now. That's what we're thinking about, is how do you control a huge environment? How does an artist control a huge environment, an immersive world, potentially with surround sound systems, massive, huge screens, also connected to DMX, and that's what I find most interesting. And then you might see in a second for how this fuels other industries. For example, they used, eventually the film Gravity used Touch Designer to control the lighting of the actors. So they had a robotic arm, which you'll see maybe in a second. Bot and Dolly from San Francisco has a KUKA robot, which is something that is used to make cars usually. But it was holding the actors, and then the LED screen was surrounding the actor. And so on set, these guys are essentially performing the system to get the shot done. And so the sun and the earth are spinning around the actor, lighting their skin. Everything else eventually replaced, but the actor's skin is lit by a coherent LED system. So just like Richie Hawtin controlling visuals live, they were using the same techniques to light a next generation film. And now more and more, because films are getting the context of building the film is getting more complex. On set, people are using these kinds of tools to shoot films, which is also a feedback loop for us because it powers these kinds of systems. And so off we go.
I'm going to make a jump. We talked about something yesterday that was quite interesting. How, we're designing these live experiences, and a lot of times we don't really know what it's going to be like till we get there. And here at this event, for instance, we do all this planning and we lay everything out, and we try to figure out how all these systems are going to work together, and how artists are going to be able to harness these technologies and actually use them to the best of their ability on such a large scale, which I think for the future is basically like the ultimate art installation just as a whole. And but it's something it's really hard to figure out exactly what it's going to be like and how it's going to flow, ahead of time before you get out here to the desert. And we had that interesting talk the other day about how can designers kind of lay out a large installation like this and walk through it and actually see what's going to work and actually test out all the content, test out all the sound, all the lighting, all the video, and seeing how it will all play together, and like what the future of that would be like as far as pre-visualization using Hollywood tools in the process of planning an event, because in Hollywood they're planning out all their shots with previs tools, and how does that trickle down to the event industry?
Yeah, so for example, we did a project with Richie at the Guggenheim, and we built an art installation there. But we built it all in 3D inside of our engine, so we could actually, we spec'd out, we took the Guggenheim model, they sent us the model, and then we mapped the Guggenheim in all kinds of different ways. We checked out different stuff, different kinds of styles of, screens against the spirals, and what's reasonable, what can you afford. We eventually came up with the cube, which you might have seen at Sonar as well, which was a column. But we programmed it all in 3D, and this is before a new technology that's coming out now, which is virtual reality, existed. And so what we're doing now is our engine now talks directly to virtual reality engines, and I'm predicting, trying to manifest the concept that we really could start to program festivals, just like we did with our one installation. But we can, as designers, we can start to load in, the stages, load in all the fixtures, and program the show without having to do the very costly, expensive process of pre-build. Or in this case, we don't even get the opportunity. Like we show up, and it's just we're constantly troubleshooting things. So that's going to become a reality. Virtual reality shows pre-vised, but then it makes you wonder, because once we program the show in virtual reality, it is a real asset, and it exists. It's something that everyone could experience. So if people are curious about the dimensions of the festival, or the size, the scale of the music artists, we could in the future, and this is way out, but other people in Japan, wherever, Germany, they might want to pop in to the virtual reality, the art installation that does exist in VR as well. So
That'd be so cool.
it's kind of neat, yeah.
To have it lived, you could relive it too. So I could go online, you could go back.
Partially.
Yeah. I guess that brings me to Ryan. You're deep in the VR space, and we talked about how VR can create a greater sense of empathy in certain applications for how you can put yourself in the shoes of another human being and really see things through their eyes, and maybe that's part of this discussion where we could actually put ourselves in the eyes of the audience or in the eyes of the artist and how they'll perceive the audience, or vice versa. And maybe it's not just about technical planning and layout and specs, but maybe more about how people will feel, and being able to plan that out and being able to maybe test that out even while creating an installation such as a festival.
Yeah, I mean, I think to kind of step that up a bit for the future festivals, I think what's really cool about VR is that when social VR gets really good, which is going to be happening really soon, I mean, you could literally be a DJ at Robot Heart, but you could be playing a virtual show, and the virtual show has avatars of individuals dressed and created however they want to be. And like Robot Heart is so notorious for storytelling, I think, and really playing the music to that setting. It's like, it'll be so interesting to me to see how DJs come up with a set playing to their audience, which are real people from around the world that might be on the moon or somewhere. So I think it's got an exciting element. But yeah, to your point about empathy, my company at Specular Theory has really been thinking a lot about, how do we really use VR to its most potential? And I think a lot of times with any new medium, you have a tendency to sort of copy the medium before it. And so one of our kind of mottos is like, if it can be done in 2D, we more than likely don't want to do it in VR, and it probably won't be a great story. Like, unless that story can truly exist only in this medium, like, does it turn out really well? And a kind of a case study for that was, we had a film at Sundance, which was created by my business partner Morris to do the series called Perspective. And the idea behind Perspective was to sort of take a hot button topic or issue and really use VR to become another person, and to see through their eyes, and to hear and feel that moment, and essentially you relive the same event through two different people's perspectives. So the first year at Sundance, it was called Chapter 1, The Party, and it was essentially a sexual assault that happens on a college campus. And cinematically, it was very PG, but the idea is that for the first 5 minutes, you're the girl, and for the second 5 minutes, you're the guy. And it wasn't really about who's good or bad, or making, a villain or a hero. It's just more about these things happen in real life, and to create conversation around something after you truly have an opportunity to experience, which you otherwise could never do in any other way. It was really impactful. I mean, particularly that one became one of the most talked about pieces at Sundance, and it was so powerful through the storytelling that we actually got invited by the Speaker of the House to show the entire California State Assembly. So, VR is really new. There's still not a ton of metrics out there, but when you're showing a VR sexual assault to all of Congress, it's pretty powerful in its own right. So,
yeah, good job. That's amazing.
sorry, was a weird segue.
No, I mean, VR has been a pretty hot topic. I'm trying to figure out how VR works. When, like, I think the last panel talked about it. Like, how are we going to how do you bring people together through something that's maybe could be seen as an isolationist technology? But if you're giving people an experience that is actually going to change maybe their heart, in some way, even if they're isolated while that happens, they could bring that, to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think that's what's really cool about it, and probably a common misconception is that people think they're going to put on a headset and never see their friends again. But I think with any technology, if you overuse it, if you watch TV for 20 hours a day, you're probably wasting your life. At the end of the day, you have a responsibility, I think, to be human. But if you can kind of use this magical device to sort of hack into a culture or a different perspective or traveling, education, anything, like, you think about, we're also fortunate to be here and experience, great festivals like this. And, what if everyone in the world could experience it? And you can't really get the same feeling from, if you're not going to be here physically, you can't get the same feeling just by watching videos and photos. So the idea that you can put a headset on and really be immersed in that scene and see things at scale and look 360 degrees, and maybe it is through someone else's eyes. But I think just the notion that if you think about all the places you've been traveling and all the different cultures you've been able to experience, I mean, that's a really powerful thing for most people that don't have the means to do it. And then you can do it in less than 2 minutes. So, it's still going to inspire me to travel. I still am very much about physically being places. But at the same time, I think, if you can travel the world in less than a minute or tap into, whether it's a war zone or a poverty or just some kind of bad situation, I mean, I think it gives you new eyes, and that's a whole new vision on a number of levels.
Absolutely. I love the idea of creating like a story world that people can enter into. That's kind of what Further Future is in a way. And also my work in large-scale projection mapping, where we're kind of transforming spaces and transforming environments into other environments in life, real life scale. So you go up to the story world, you could walk around it, you could check it out from different angles, and you're in your body, you're with your friends, you're walking around it, you're looking at it and experiencing it that way. And it is kind of a form of virtual reality, it just almost like, to me, like projection mapping is the future of filmmaking, and I'd like to see it turn into more of a storytelling medium, to where this story is not only playing out on a screen, but playing out on all these different objects and spaces all around you, and you're not locked in your chair while you're not locked in your chair silent while you're experiencing that. And that's something that kind of brought me into wanting to be in live entertainment. Was movies are great. In movies we've developed the most sophisticated visual technology out there, but at the same time the application is always the same. You're always sitting in a chair silently watching a film, but you're going through this amazing emotional experience. And like, what would that be like if you can share that and it could be like a little more social and a little more interactive? And that's something that I've pushed my work to try to get to. And I'm lucky enough to be sitting here with Saki, who's been doing this for a really long time and has created some of the greatest large scale, I would say, immersive film type work that's been out already. So I'd love you to talk a little bit about that a bit more, and how film crosses over, filmmaking, story worlds and things like that cross over into multimedia, large-scale multimedia design.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting subject, the potential isolation of VR, but also I really like, Ryan, when you're saying, we create unique experiences that could not be experienced in any other way, and there's a lot of value to that, I think. For us, at Moment Factory, we say we do it in public, because what we do is we try to create new types of entertainments that is worth for people to leave their home theater, and it's worth for them to leave their personal devices and actually go and connect physically with people. And if you look back in history, maybe the campfire was the first place that people would actually, tell stories and gather physically physically together. And if you look at the Greek-Romans in the past also, there'd be hundreds of thousands of people in arenas. And then if you look at theater in Europe after that, the social scene became almost as important as the theater itself, as the play itself. And the technology also of electric lighting changed theater. It made it possible for people to actually play on stage. Before, they were all playing like in the center with candlelight. Then if you look a little bit further, when films came out, the campfire became 24 frames a second, and the storytelling needed to change. So at the beginning of cinema, basically people were using theatrical storytelling tools, but now, they invented the cuts and, the dialogues and all of these different tools that, were invented through this medium. And I think that, our mediums also need this exploration, and I think everyone's participating to, develop this new storytelling language. It's a little bit the same with VR. You can't necessarily cut and use the same techniques, so it's a really different way of looking at it. It's a little bit like the Lumiere brothers when they had this train, their first films, they had this train coming to the station, and everyone would fall off their seats, It's like, whoa, yeah, running out of the theater, the train's gonna hit me. So it's a little bit the same when you look at projection mapping, for example, when the building crumbles, But then we need to start looking at ways to connect people deeper with the experience at a more emotional level than just the tricks, So I think all these techniques are being developed, and the context is very different. People are not having the same attention, and you don't have the same tools, so it's very different, And same with TV. When TV came along, then the sitcoms came out, and all these new mediums came out, and advertisement kind of like changed the world again, So there's a lot of different things, and the same thing with the internet now. You don't really need to leave your house. You have customized, amazing home theaters and all that. And the new generations are also learning completely differently. They're learning interfaces. We're spending so much time plugged in. It's becoming just a natural thing for people, than social media and all that. So for us, it's all about, bringing people together physically and creating valuable experiences that are valuable enough that people will leave their house and the comfort of their personal devices to experience it together.
Yeah, no, that's a really amazing thought that just came through my head. Like, the Lumiere brothers who made that movie of the train coming right out the camera and everyone ducking, trying to think the train is jumping out. And with projection mapping now, people can't believe their eyes what they're seeing a lot of times. But it's like, as artists working with the cutting edge of technology, the goal is, can you make a point before people are so used to that technology that it has no impact? Because we're moving so fast that people are getting used to stuff like, projection mapping may become just like normal television pretty soon, where the crumbling of the bricks and things popping in and out at you in that forced perspective won't have the same effect as it does now. But what we really want to see is, what can we teach people, and what type of stories can we tell before the technology is more blasé, so like, however cool, the gimmick is, it's like, you got to get right behind it with a good point, because otherwise it's still a gimmick.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the medium projection mapping is also architectural, so you can't just take the cinematographic tools of storytelling. There's a mix with the physical space, and I think we need to create new ways of telling stories and new ways of engaging people that are not just based on the references from TV or film, So it's a completely different medium, so it needs to be dealt with differently.
Hey, I need this to happen. How do you do it? Directly from the script, directly from an artist's idea. Unlimited in the human mind of like, what can we visualize, and then coming to you and being like, hey, we need hellfire to rain down and destroy an entire city, or like whatever, and you're the guy who has to field those requests and then come up with a way to do it. Maybe we could talk about some of those challenges, and also what it's like to be the guy who has to deal with that.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess some of the credits, I guess, would be Sin City and Spider-Man 2, Apocalypto, a number of pretty big films. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of situational. It's sort of project by project, I guess. You have to know your tool set very, very, very well, and you have to rely on some exceptional artists to kind of figure it out. And I think there's a constant learning or constant craving to learn, not just of the tools, but of the techniques and sort of what's gone before you. And it's that willingness to sort of jump off a ledge sort of together and say, we're going to figure out how to do this, as big as those budgets seem to be, they're actually quite limited for what you're attempting to do. And so there's always that challenge of you're pushing into something that's unknown, and how do you know you're going to deliver it, on time, on budget, but at an exceptional quality bar.
What are some of the more wild challenges that you've been faced with as far as visualizing these types of ideas that are coming out of the human brain?
I think one of the bigger challenges is kind of setting expectations up front, or at least getting the download up front of what the expectations are. Working with a big director or big talent, they often bring expectations, and a lot of times pulling those thoughts out of their head is the biggest challenge, to make sure that you're going to realistically portray them in visual effects. I think one of the more challenging ones, this has obviously been a number of years ago, but in like Spider-Man 2, there was the Doc Octopus character in Spider-Man, and they had this crazy fight up the building, and there was these like virtual cameras swooping in and around, and the 8 arms flailing around, and it needed to make sense. Like, it not only had to be like visually entertaining, but the physics needed to make sense, and the story needed to make sense, and it just needed to be kind of rad at the end of the day. And we could have gone off in a dark hole and made something cool, but our job is to make the filmmakers' dreams or ideas come true. So we need to know what their expectations are, what their benchmark for quality is, and then as people that want to keep doing this, we try to push that even further. So we get Robert Rodriguez's ideas for Sin City, and then how do we make that even better than what he came up with?
Not to mention the expectations of the audience getting harder and harder to please.
Yeah, and those are the harshest critics of all. So, matching the expectations or exceeding the expectations of an audience is getting harder and harder. The challenges now are, so esoteric now that we're trying to face with, photorealistic humans and hair and like these things that are still at the very, very bleeding edge of visual effects technology, and Avatar type level visual effects, where there's not a single piece of reality on the screen. It's completely artificial, completely virtual, and then exceeding because your brain is trying to pick it apart constantly, and so you're really having to trick not just your brain, but millions of brains into believing it's true.
So it comes from an intense study of reality in order to recreate reality.
Oh yeah, heightened reality, really. Yeah.
And a heightened reality.
What is real?
One of our platforms for filmmaking new this year is the Further Future Film Festival, where we're screening experimental films on the main stage in between band changeovers. I don't know if any of you guys have been able to see that, and it's been pretty cool. So we have filmmakers in the audience, or experimental media people who want to come talk to me and get their film on the main stage. It's pretty neat to see it go up there and have full concert audio with a captive audience. It's just I think it's a great platform for short films, and it's been pretty successful this year. And also, the way we curate it is a lot of times, along the lines of how we see the Further Future Festival as a kind of collective science fiction idea. One thing, science fiction is an interesting genre. It's just mainly just about new ideas. One thing I notice in science fiction is it's mostly done by singular artists, writers who have almost, it seems more often, a dark vision of the future, and science fiction has always kind of been like a warning. Like, hey, don't build robots. They're going to turn against you and kill you. And what's the first thing we do when we have the ability? We build fucking robots. And I don't know if science fiction has really warned anybody enough to not go down some of these roads. Hearing stuff all week about. I think the same people that are creating some of these systems that can really harm humanity are exposed to the same science fiction that we all are. And I don't know if the warning aspect is really helping. I think it's just creating more of a bleak kind of viewpoint. And once you have that kind of bleak viewpoint out there, you don't really care what happens in the future. And, I think, further future is more about creating a positive vision of the future, kind of showing people the light of what things could be like. What's the science fiction we should be living, rather than what are we supposed to be afraid of in regards to the future. And so the Further Future Film Festival is kind of about that. The films we take on have to do with, a bright future, which I think there just needs to be more artists exploring that idea. And we also curate the visuals. So when you see the live visuals during the band's performance on the main stage and on the Robot Heart stage, a lot of that is, that concept I just talked about as far as inspiration is trying to play through there with our VJs who take those films and remix them live to some of the DJ sets. Keisuke over here on my right is one of the VJs, and his specialty is in combining light and music in new and interesting ways. So Keisuke, we talked a little bit about some of your synesthesia concepts. Maybe you want to discuss that? There's a mic by your right foot. There you go. There you go.
Yes, so my story is, I'm originally from Japan, and I'm sorry, my voice is so distorted after shouting, fixing problems on the bus, pretty much happening every 1 hour. But you have to make the festival alive, so there are a lot of people behind the scene running cables and checking screens and stuff. But I originally studied films in Tokyo, and then later on worked for Media Research Lab in Kyoto in Japan. And then the reason why I came to United States was I joined a company called Quark. Maybe some of you may remember the print publishing software, which basically typography and design in general. So I worked for Quark total 8 years, and mainly working on this project called Quark Interactive Designer, which enables print layout, every object into interactive presentation. So by that time, we chose Flash as a output format, but in underlying technology, it's basically object-based interactive scripting application. And so when you think about interactivity, there is always human interaction, and mainly we use fingers. But technology has been developed much further. So these days we have brainwave sensing technology that syncs your brainwaves with some sound to help your meditation. That's very similar to synesthesia, because when your consciousness or mind is calm state, you don't really imagine some random noise or aggressive visuals. You want to see something very chill, mellow. Just our visual sense itself affects our internal processing. So that's basically the concept of synesthesia. So even like if you do graphic design, I personally feel like each color has its own emotion. So combining those colors, objects, shapes, and adding any extra motion is actually translating the music. That's how I approach those live visual environments. So and especially I'm much inspired by electronic music, like techno, from early 90s, and I'm also involved in Movement Detroit Festival to run stage visuals, and pretty much done all the mega festival stages, but things are slightly different because the bigger the artist scale would be, you have to create certain scripted show because they have their own songs, and then each songs you have a promotional video or all kinds of stuff. But in the sense of DJing, you don't have that content, in front of me. So you always have to listen what DJ is playing, what this sound translates into other visual form. So I take, let's say, 4 layers: bass, synthesizer, vocal, and maybe hi-hat. So when you match those 4 layers into some visual forms, actually you start seeing, wow, I never actually imagined in my head, but music inspired me to present this visual form, which is completely real time. So that's how basically I approach the VJ. And also after Quark, I worked for Beatport and Native Instruments as a part of product management. So when you look at audio application, you can have 64 channels to create very complicated audio. And we don't really see that 64 elements when we hear music. But when musicians want to integrate certain video, usually those 64 channels and 1 video layer. That's what Ableton Live does. But when you look at movie creator perspective, you have Final Cut Pro or Premiere, and you have 20, 30 scenes, but only 1 audio. So both sound, audio, people are so focused onto each genre and don't really think about how to integrate. So I think that's very interesting. Jarret and also Ryan and Moment Factory and has been doing really active about making those experiences.
Yeah, I mean the music, sound system is kind of like the most intense vibration that we're gonna feel in our bodies. And a lot of it is like a collective meditation. Listening to electronic music, putting us in this trance-like state. As the visual artists who are part of that visualization of that music, we have a great responsibility of, what are we going to show people while they're in that state, while they're kind of open-hearted and influenceable. Synesthesia is great as it enhances that meditation, and then my thing is layering some storytelling on top of that. So we can mix in some pretty cool ideas from filmmakers right into that mix, and really take people on a visual journey as well, while they're receptive to learn and to really experience these things. It's
cool to be able to come here and experiment, because usually the things that I think most of us are doing is usually for corporate stuff or very specific stuff, but here we get to actually bring a lot of the technology that we use in these more sophisticated environments, but we come here in a chill environment, drink some beers, and get to fuck around on really, really great hardware. And I think over time, I hope this festival will grow so that we can do more of these things and do more immersive, higher resolution screens. Like I was just at Coachella, which has always been like on visual stuff. But this year, at least they had a massively high resolution LED screen. It wasn't used very well, but it was there. The technology was there. I saw some good shows on it, but nothing was it wasn't consistently great. Same thing here. I mean, the higher resolution, trust me, the higher resolution screens that these guys can afford, we can do crazier and crazier things, and to be able to place elements into the audience, and I think that's what we're talking about here, is immersive experiences, to be able to do that, and then as well as artists, the guys who come here and try stuff out, to have a calm environment where people aren't uptight about things not working, then we're going to be more free, and we're going to be able to make really cool things. And that's what we do. When you build shows, you have to show up and you have to try things out, and we don't have that luxury here necessarily, but we can do that in real time with everybody. And so I think that's why I'm here. That's why I'm very happy. I'm very thankful to be here. So
Sure. I mean, the difference between this and Burning Man is we have a little bit of a better platform to create a focused curatorial vision, with all these toys. It's not exactly anything goes. We're always trying to push the limits of what's possible, with the toys, with just a better platform to try to get our sound and vision game as high as it can be, but with people who are a lot of people are coming from Burning Man, wanting to see this kind of stuff, but out there you don't really have the the infrastructure to really pull anything that technological off reliably.
And I think that technology is changing. That like today, like this year, computer technology, the kinds of, like for example, Dante audio network system. You can send. Don't mean to get too techie, but you can send 64 channels of 96K audio over an Ethernet cable, and when we can do that along with 4K video, and we can send that down an Ethernet cable, that means that we can put a screen way over there, and we can put a screen way over there, and they can be super high resolution, and they can all be syncopated and in control of one artist. And I think that's where I can see that this festival is on that vector, and every festival is to a certain extent, but to have a bunch of technical people in the same room doing it for the love, this is going to happen, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we talked about, if you could map out all the screens and all the sound systems, like for this entire festival, and have one artist kind of take it over for an hour and have like this one singular vision, it's to be like, oh, this is the moment of, such and such, and everyone's kind of experiencing it no matter where you are in the festival. I think that's a pretty cool idea. Coming down to like, singular artist vision taking over these massive systems and creating an immersive experience of music and light all together, that can maybe transcend a single stage and take over multiple stages at once, and not just stages, but the walk between the stages, there could be stuff going on. And I mean, that obviously takes a very strong vision, I don't know how many artists would be totally ready for that this day and age, but it does bring me to one of your projects, Saki, working with Trent Reznor on his 9 Inch Nails stuff, and I know that he approaches his concerts like almost like a film director would, where he has precise control over everything that happens in lighting, video, sound, and theatrics, during that 2 hours. And maybe you could speak what it was like, or give us a little insight on the process to the 9 Inch Nails tour.
Yeah, we ended up doing a few tours, but the first one is maybe the more dramatic and iconic. I think it was in 2008, and Trent, we got in contact with Trent, and he wanted to make his show interactive. So he didn't really know what that meant, and he didn't really know what it could do, and he didn't really know what he wanted. And we had we signed a contract. 3 months later, it had to be like on tour. And the rock show context is quite difficult. They set up in the morning in the arena and they take it down at night. So everything needs to be, really rugged and really solid, and it needs to work. So we bought the racks, and we bought a whole bunch of tools and stuff, because we didn't really know what he wanted. So we kind of built a library of effects and got there on site. And like, you know, in those days, I mean, there was no touch designer, there was no tools. We had to code everything live. So the guys would code at night, and then we'd show stuff in the day. And oh no, it needs to be more organic, it needs to be more like this, and then, or we would try stuff at night. And because when you're working with generative, interactive stuff, everything influences everything. So if you're changing the lighting, well, the effect is different, especially when it's kind of physics and particles. If there's a movement at the beginning, it all influences itself. So we kind of like develop technologies and develop tricks and hacked a whole bunch of different things. And so many times during that process, I was like, this is never going to happen. It's impossible. It's a fucking mess. You know, but in the end, it worked out. It became an iconic show. And we use a lot of different technologies, like scanners that scan X and Y, and they can become a big kind of like touch screen. So this, like the video wall became a touch screen. Another thing is Trent would kind of like walk. He would have like these transparent LED screens, so like strips of low resolution LED screens, and we had like this TV noise on it. And as Trent would come closer, it would kind of dissipate around him, so you would see him through the screens. And then we had a whole bunch of, you know, other things. Recently, we worked a lot with the Kinect cameras, which are also quite useful and rugged and simple. But yeah, it's an interesting process. It's also the chicken and the egg. You never know where to start and how to develop. So the process is quite messy.
Was there a big difference between that and what you did for Madonna?
Yeah, Madonna's completely different. I mean, they're both really controlling, and they're both very intense characters. But Madonna has a process, you know. She can see mood boards and decide on stuff. Also, the production is completely different. Trent likes textures that don't look like they were too worked. This kind of digital, organic vibe. Madonna is much more theatrical and, you know, more bigger post-production. So she's also like always rehearsed and exactly perfect timing on everything. And the stage is much more theatrical in the sense there's also like dancers and costumes and this whole thing. With Trent, it's just more like rock, you know, and much darker. So it's interesting to work with different artists like that, because you kind of like stretch the aesthetics and you stretch the process with the teams. It's interesting.
So a lot of times they're coming with something they're not sure it's possible. It's just coming out of their heads, and they're wondering if there's a technology to support it. Or is it the other way around, where you're saying, hey, here's the tools you can use, here's what we know how to do, how can you use this?
Yeah, well, with Trent, especially in 2008, he didn't really know what was possible. He just thought it would be cool if the stage could respond to their presence. And so we just brought in a whole bunch of things and started trying stuff out, you know. There's stuff where we used an infrared camera and we track the lighting. So it's the lighting designer that generates, you know, feedback and effects on the screens from the light sources. Or, you know, so there's a big variety of effects, and we kind of just discovered them as we were moving forward with them. With Madonna, it's more of an aesthetic thing. It's more like, how can, you know, I want to create this thing, or basically we bring them ideas and, you know, they select and choose and guide us through it, basically.
Very cool. Well, I know this has kind of been all over the place, but you know that's the point, is to get these different conversations in one spot together, where we can all inspire each other and kind of riff. You know, because the live experience just encapsulates you know, just about everything you could imagine. And you know, how can we increase the user experience through all this technical know-how that we have and all these different art projects we've worked on? You know, what can we do for festivals and what, you know, to make you guys enjoy the show and get involved. We're going to open it up to Q&A. I'll pass it around a mic if anyone has questions for us. That'd be great. Oh, we're almost done. Yeah.
You've got a question?
Okay, down here, please.
Hey, Kind of going back to virtual reality and everything, how do you think, in terms of making films and stuff, that's going to change the way that we tell stories, and how do you think that we're going to be able to include the element of choice while still maintaining control and a forced perspective in a 360-degree world where the participant is actually involved in the story? Just curious about how you think filmmaking can go in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally have a filmmaker background, but I can tell you that, you know, it's an entirely new language, and it's an entirely new way to think about the medium. And I think a lot of times people think or expect these amazing directors like Steven Spielberg to excel in VR just because they're so great at film. But the reality is like the next Steven Spielberg is probably in college right now, like learning on these tools, and it's very difficult to have to unlearn so many years of experience working in a specific medium. I mean, when you're filming in 360, there's no director's chair. Like for the most part, you've got to really stage and choreograph and block and throw the camera down, and hit the button, and everybody goes hide. And you have to kind of think about, you know, all the different movement and things happening around you. And so I think, you know, you don't have as much control over framing it specifically for the user, because the user does have freedom to like look around and kind of get their own experience out of it. So, you know, I certainly don't think it's going to replace film at all. I think it'll just either enhance an existing film as like ancillary content, or we're just going to create this whole new storytelling within that medium. And you know, people are working, I think, with branching narratives, which is kind of what you were talking about, and that's something the games company has done an amazing job with. And so I think now it's kind of a matter of combining, you know, VR and kind of film and visual effects backgrounds, and sort of layering that into game engines and driving both. That answered your question.
Thanks. Next question. I see a hand up in the center here.
I'm a big fan of your work. I've been tracking Moment Factory and V Squared for some time. Really honored to meet you guys, and good to meet the rest of you as well. Just learn what you're up to. I've been building immersive media spaces that are based on biomimicry, like holographic architectures. So I created a space called the Holosphere, and it's a ritual space at festivals that's spherical. Just studying kind of what the difference was between our cultures and cultures had thrived in a certain different way, particularly Rome and Greece. And we discovered that at this absolute epicenter of their culture was the amphitheater. And it was a place that was free and designed for all the various mastery traditions, lineages, probability vectors to interface. There was only one place. All roads led to it. And I've been dreaming and thinking a lot about, why doesn't that exist yet here, you know? Like generally in our expressions of the attempt to create unity or unified field. I have another organization called unify.org, and we get millions of people all around the world meditating at the same moment in places all over the world on Peace Day and Earth Day, stuff like this. So I've been dreaming a lot about and wanted to garner your perspective on, even regarding synesthesia. We have these 360-degree projections, a holophonic spherical audio system, and vibroacoustic seating. So you're fully immersed in the experience that's happening. And we get planetarium softwares and play with creating realities that are interactive and participatory, as to your point. So we found that a central stage where it's not above but below, and the people are all looking in, and there's no boundary between the audience and the performers, allowed for amazing levels of just wonderful interactivity that were not scripted even, but somehow naturally emerged. Like people would come in the room and just start sitting in a circle. So anyways, I wanted to ask you guys a question, or gain each of your perspectives on what the ultimate way is to create a unified field. in an experience, and especially chapter by chapter by chapter, the storytelling involves. It's a big one.
Keisuke?
So, I think music defines all the timing. And when I was working for Native Instruments, I was a product manager for Tractor, and there is a hidden project called Video Bridge, which enables all the Tractor controllers as to MIDI signal and talking with any video program, media server, and visual programs. So in that sense, even though if you play music, you always have a MIDI clock syncing with drum machines and synthesizer, timing is always, music is all about timing in some way. So that cue can trigger video, and that can also be done by SEMPTE, which is broadcasting protocol. But I think, as far as I'm seeing all the video installations and interactive projects, I think audio is trigger point. What do you think?
I'll try to answer your question as directly as possible. I'm a little bit more pragmatic, and I've been building a software engine to enable something like that for 15 years. The way that I look at it is kind of one step at a time, and you have to bite things off that you can chew, and so you can do. For example, there's Richie, Hawtin, and Amon, Tobin. All of these electronic music events are really that's something bite-sized that we can handle because they're small enough. And Moment Factory they're way larger scale. They do the biggest stuff, and they're more sophisticated. They have 100 people working for you, if not more, right? I mean, we're a small company, but we make the tools to enable companies like Moment Factory to do it. And so we take the small pieces, we try stuff out, and then we give it to everyone else. And so that's what we're just providing the tools to enable other people to do it, and they do a better job than us. And that's the thing is sharing is really one of the most important components to making that happen, I think. So yeah.
Oh, well, I was just going to add to that. I think VR is going to be a powerful tool that will sort of transform and transcend us. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of things in life or how we perceive the world are based on kind of awareness and education. And so I really think that, having a device like this or having this immersive storytelling, when used for good, really can change the world and unify us, because a lot of it comes from differences or people not having the ability to understand, or because they haven't been somewhere and they haven't lived that person's culture. Like, I think there's a lot to be said for when you can start becoming someone else and hear and see through someone else's eyes.
Yeah, I think your question is very interesting. A lot of the experiences that are created with multimedia are entertainment driven, and your question is more driven by a meditation kind of context. Yeah, so it's more of an inner journey than an external journey, and somehow it's interesting, even if you're a whole group of people, to create a focus that's not just about clearly entertaining, but it's about creating another frequency somehow. And I think the medium that we all work with is fundamentally light. And we take light for granted. We turn the switch on and off, and we measure it scientifically. But light is an amazing phenomenon, and it's so mysterious and so fundamental to everything that we see. And I think there's probably an interesting link between light and consciousness, and being able to use light in new ways, and whether it's with a VR headset, whether it's an immersive installation, it's all really, I think, an interesting thing. If people can have enough interest in wanting to go there, it takes a certain dedication that's different than going into a show. You go to a show, you can entertain me, but there's a certain amount of work to create a consciousness meditation context to this type of work. But there is some, like museums and stuff sometimes, but a lot of light artists are pushing this further now. But I think it's a very interesting context. I have a small art practice on the side, and we try to work on that level. Because when you come into a gallery space, you come in with a different intention. You're more willing to go inside and reflect than, being outside and receive,
Thanks. Yeah, I guess I can wrap this up by, my answer to the question, which is about I agree with everyone. It is about awareness, about the studying of reality in order to enhance reality or to reinterpret reality in an interesting way, and it's about sharing and collaboration. The biggest collaborative art form we have is filmmaking, and it's a very interesting. For 100 years they've been getting really good at hundreds of people coming together under one creative vision, and how do you organize that? How does each person and their specialty fit into this puzzle, and how can they all kind of be working towards something greater than themselves? And a lot of our mediums are a bit smaller in the team structure and how that collaboration works. But I think we can learn a lot from the film industry and how collaborative art on a large scale can really point at a singular idea and realize it. And I look at multimedia design and experiential design as the future of filmmaking, and that's why I put this panel together. And I think we just really need to be collaborating more between industries, and we're all kind of out on our own little cutting-edge technological islands, but coming together in a context like this, I think there's a lot of really cool things possible, such as the installation you mentioned. It would just take a lot of work from a lot of really smart people coming together. And so we'll be hanging out up here if anyone is interested in talking to us after we get off. Come on over. Thank you very much.